Candyman was released in 1992 and was directed by Bernard Rose. It's based on a short story called The Forbidden by Clive Barker, who incidentally also is one of the producers on the film, and it's a very interesting alternative take on the typical horror story. Candyman is certainly a popular character, he has a strong cult following, but not necessarily as large a following as Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers, etc. He's certainly a distinguished horror character, just not necessarily as prolific as the others. Now, the movie was a commercial and critical success, with over 70% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and making $25 million from an $8 million budget. So it was a success, and without getting into spoilers, the movie is based around the story of a married couple played by Xander Berkeley and Virginia Madsen, and Virginia Madsen in particular is looking into an urban legend called the Candyman, played by Tony Todd. And this Candyman character starts to change in her view. Maybe he might be more than just an urban legend. And without spoiling the story, I found this to be an interesting alternative to more obvious choices of horror, slasher, your typical monster. Now, to get into our rating system, we first of all, of course, have the story and plot. And for the story and plot of Candyman, I'm going to give the film a 7 out of 10. And the reason for that is because it's different. It is a unique take on the typical horror movie monster. He's not some silent, lumbering idiot, as is an easy monster to portray on film, and has been done many times, unfortunately. He's an interesting character. He has intelligence, he has a backstory, he is, in effect, a tragic character, the Candyman himself. So overall, it's a 7 out of 10. As far as the actual characters and the motivations behind them, I'm going to give the film, again, a 7. Now, the strongest character in the film is, as you would expect and hope, the Candyman himself. At the end of the day, you watch the film to see the monster, so you need to have a strong monster. And he is. He's, as I said, an interesting character. The other characters are good for the most part. Often in horror films, characters are treated as though they're stupid, and that just insults the intelligence of the viewer. In this film, they're not. You can actually sympathise with the plight of various people in the film. And that's a refreshing difference in a genre that usually does the exact opposite. So overall, I'm giving it a 7. As far as the visuals and effects, it's not as effects heavy, certainly not as CGI heavy as many other horror films. There's lots of practical effects, and the effects that are used are very good. There's not a huge amount of them though. It tends to be here and there, but they're used with good effect. So overall, I'm going to give the visuals and effects an 8, because I like the fact that they're mostly practical, and when they are used, they're unique. They're unlike effects that you see in many other horror films, and originality is always going to get good points in my book. Moving on to the audio and soundtrack of the film, I'm going to give the film a 6, because although it certainly wasn't bad by any stretch, the sound was good, the audio was good, the soundtrack itself is good, it just didn't grab me as much as other horror soundtracks and audio effects do. Iconic tracks such as from Friday the 13th, Halloween, The Thing, etc. They are well known and very distinguished soundtracks. This film, although not bad by any stretch, just didn't come across as being outstanding. So the rating isn't bad, but not as high as it could have been. For the overall rewatchability and entertainment factor, I'm going to give the film another 6. Now, you may expect it to be higher than that given the praise that I've given to the film, but the main reason why I've rated it as a 6 is due to the fact that the film has an air of a mystery movie to it. It's more than just a horror film. It's a psychological horror as well as being a typical physical gore horror film, but it also has an element of mystery as you travel with the main character and her trying to find out the truth of events. It has elements of crime drama to it, although it's not a crime drama. And as I've mentioned before on the channel, with those kind of stories, once you know the end result, that can hinder them a little bit in terms of rewatchability. Now, it doesn't hinder it too much in this regard, because the Candyman is still a great character, and the film itself is far better than many other horror films. But the rewatchability isn't as high as some others. It wasn't the kind of horror film that I finished watching and immediately wanted to go back to, and with many other horror films, that has been the case for me. So overall, it's a 6. And for our overall tabulated score out of 5 for this film, it gets a 3.4 as a result of all of our scores put together, and that is a perfectly respectable score, especially within the horror genre. So my overall verdict for Candyman is, if you haven't had the chance to see this film, I would recommend checking it out. And to be honest, you don't even necessarily need to be the strongest of horror fans specifically to enjoy it, because it's not your average horror film. It is different. It has a different mood, a different feel. The majority of the film takes place in daylight, and it's interesting. As I said, it's different. So yes, I would definitely recommend checking out this film at least once. But that's it overall for this particular review. I'll see you guys next time, and for now, thanks for watching.